Hi everyone, Ross here from McGibbon Reptile Photography, and I've put together a short educational documentary covering everything you need to know about Australian venomous snakes and their behaviour.
Those of you who are familiar with my work know that I like to get up close and personal when filming reptiles in the wild, particularly with venomous snakes. I've filmed all of Australia's deadliest snakes, including taipans, tiger snakes, brown snakes, black snakes, death adders, and more. The knowledge, experience, and skills I've gained from a lifelong obsession with snakes and from my time working as a professional snake catcher keep me relatively safe during my frequent encounters with venomous snakes. And by making this short film, I hope to pass on some of that knowledge to the Australian public so that you too can better understand these misunderstood creatures and remain safe should you encounter one. Over the course of this short film, I'm going to provide you with some important information about Australian venomous snakes. I'm going to give you a detailed breakdown of the defensive behaviour of snakes, and I'll explain why all you need is a healthy respect for snakes and not the extreme levels of fear that some people live with. Finally, I'm going to show you the correct way to respond if you encounter a snake. Australia is home to around 215 species of snakes, and around half of those are terrestrial or land-dwelling venomous snakes. It sounds daunting if you aren't really a huge fan of snakes. However, only around 40 of those terrestrial species possess venom that is considered potentially dangerous to humans. Out of those 40 species, only around 10 are recorded to be responsible for human fatalities. Within Australia and around the world, there is far too much hype surrounding the danger of Australian venomous snakes. This is fueled by sensationalised media coverage of snakes, fear-based documentaries, outrageous movies portraying snakes in absurd ways, and a staggering amount of misleading and inaccurate information circulating on the internet. All this hype and negative press only serves to magnify the fear people already have for these animals and further vilify snakes as the bad guys. Each time the Australian media runs a fear-mongering story about snakes, it causes high levels of irrational perceived fear among the public, when in reality the actual danger snakes pose to us is quite low. Furthermore, it makes it difficult for educators like myself and other reptile professionals to get the correct information out there. So let's cut through the hype and talk some real facts about snakebite and animal-related deaths in Australia. Despite Australia being home to a vast array of venomous and potentially dangerous creatures, you might be shocked to learn that the biggest killers in Australia are horses, cattle, dogs, and kangaroos. A study of animal-related deaths from 2000 to 2010 revealed that out of 254 animal-related deaths, horses, ponies, and donkeys killed the most people at 77. Cattle killed 33, dogs killed 27, and most of those were children under the ages of 4 or the elderly. Kangaroos killed 18, bees killed 16, sharks killed 16, and snakes came in at number 7 on the list at 14. When you learn the truth, it is staggering that so many people lose their minds when they see a snake, but don't think twice about driving on rural roads at night or letting their kids pat a strange dog. Current estimates for confirmed snakebite cases in Australia are around 200 to 500 cases per year. Of those, around 100 require treatment with antivenom, and an average of only 2 cases are fatal. For a country with the greatest number of venomous snakes in the world, an average number of 2 human deaths is very low. A study called the Australian Snakebite Project recorded snakebite cases over a 10-year period from 2005 to 2015. In this period, they examined data from 1,548 reported snakebite cases, of which 835 people were envenomed and 23 cases were fatal. According to these statistics, if you're envenomed by a snake in Australia over this 10-year period, your chance of dying was less than 3%. Furthermore, out of the 1,548 recorded snakebite cases, around 1/4 of the bite recipients were knowingly interfering with the snake, meaning if you don't mess with snakes, you can reduce your chance of being bitten by 25%. A large part of Australia's charm is its biodiversity. We have some of the most spectacular and unique wildlife on the planet. Like it or not, snakes are an integral part of our ecosystem. They perform the role of middle-order predators, which keep populations of other animals balanced. Most importantly, snakes control introduced pests such as rats and mice, which spread disease, decimate crops, and outcompete our native wildlife for precious food and other resources. Another important fact that is often overlooked is that snakes are a food source for other animals such as carnivorous mammals, monitor lizards, and predatory birds. One of Australia's favourite birds, the 𝗗𝗘𝗔𝗗𝗏, love feeding on snakes. Even our beloved green tree frog will predate on a small snake if the opportunity arises. Within the general public, the majority of people are far too fearful of snakes because they simply don't understand what snakes want and why they behave the way they do. So what do snakes want? Snakes are just like any other wild animal in that they want to survive to maturity and reproduce. To do that, they need food, water, a safe place to shelter, a partner to mate with, and specifically for reptiles, somewhere to regulate their body temperature. When I attend call-outs as a snake catcher or interact with the public online, I am surprised to discover how many people don't understand the natural world and how it works, and the day-to-day struggle that our wildlife faces. They don't consider that their property was once habitat for native wildlife. When we clear native bushland to make way for human development, we severely impact or destroy their habitat. While the average person can't do much about this, at the very least, we can cut wild animals some slack and accept that occasionally they may want to search our properties for food, water, and shelter. A common statement I hear from members of the public is, "I don't mind snakes as long as they don't come near my property." We must understand that wild animals cannot grasp the concept of property ownership or trespassing. They are simply looking for resources to survive. Furthermore, we often attract snakes to our properties because we provide them with these resources. We offer them shelter by leaving wood piles and building materials laying around. We provide them with food by failing to secure grain and other pet foods which attract rats and mice. And we offer them the chance for an easy meal by having various forms of small, furry and feathery domestic animals running around. Ask yourself, if you were a hungry snake looking for a meal, would you waste time and energy hunting other predatory savvy wild animals, or would you just take the easy option and enter an unsecured bird aviary or guinea pig enclosure? Hopefully now you understand why wild animals want to take advantage of these resources, and when they do, we need to take responsibility for this and take the appropriate precautions, not blame the wildlife for exploiting resources that we have provided. To ensure their survival, snakes need to protect themselves from predators, and they do this in some pretty interesting ways. Before I go into detail about this behaviour, it is crucial that you understand that because snakes are relatively small compared to us, when we get too close, they generally perceive humans and any animals larger than they are as potential predators or a threat to their safety. When a snake suddenly encounters a large animal, for example a human or one of our pets, they generally feel threatened by our size and may respond in one of the following three ways: fight, flight, or crypsis. Crypsis is derived from a Greek word meaning hidden or concealment. A snake performing crypsis may simply remain still to avoid detection, like this red-bellied black snake I located while basking on the Sunshine Coast in Queensland. Notice how the snake relies on crypsis until it decides that fleeing is the better option. While searching for snakes around a popular lake in Perth, I passed a man and his dog walking along this path. After taking a few more steps, I noticed a tiger snake basking right beside the path. The man and his dog had walked within inches of it, and the snake remained completely still to avoid confrontation. Flight or fleeing is when a snake flees to the nearest available cover upon being disturbed. It is the most common response for wild animals, especially snakes, because it negates the risk of being injured or killed in a confrontation. Sometimes fleeing is as simple as disappearing into nearby vegetation or down a hole. However, if the snake is encountered while moving across open ground, your front lawn for example, the nearest cover or path of escape can sometimes be behind the person. When the snake flees for this cover, it can give the impression that the snake is beelining directly for us or chasing us. In reality, the snake is just trying to reach safety by first getting past you. Fight is when a snake believes it must stand its ground and act offensively to warn off a perceived threat. To achieve this, a snake may exhibit the following behaviours: rearing up, flattening of the neck, mouth gaping, hissing, thrashing around, mock strikes, lunging and headbutts, offensive advances, and biting or dry biting. Each of these are anti-predator strategies, otherwise known as defensive behaviour. They are behaviours that most people mistake for aggression, believing that the snake is attacking them or being aggressive towards them for no reason. In reality, these behaviours are defensive in nature rather than aggressive, because in the snake's mind, you are a large predator and the snake feels it must defend itself from you. Now I will explain each of these behaviours in detail. Rearing. In the animal kingdom, smaller animals generally back down to larger opponents. Being that snakes are so close to the ground and relatively small in stature, if they want to warn off a predator, they need to look much larger than they actually are. To achieve this, snakes often rear their forebodies up off the ground to appear taller. Flattening of the neck. By flattening its neck out, a snake can appear bigger than it really is. We've all seen how well cobras perform this behaviour, but some Australian snakes, such as tiger snakes, red-bellied black snakes, and mulga snakes, perform this behaviour quite well. Neck flattening can be performed in an upright position or while horizontal to the ground, known as the side angle defensive display. Death adders take this one step further and flatten out their entire bodies while angling the largest surface area towards the perceived threat to appear larger. Mouth gaping. Mouth gaping can be used to intimidate, or it can be used to communicate when a snake is feeling agitated. It can be as subtle as dropping the lower jaw just a little, and taipans are well known for this behaviour. If a snake wants to go for maximum intimidation, a full mouth gape can be used where the fangs and the mouth lining are completely revealed. Both taipans and brown snakes are well known for this behaviour. Hissing. Hissing is used to audibly convey a message of intimidation or agitation. It is performed by forcibly expelling air from the glottis, an organ in the throat of the snake that normally assists with breathing. Thrashing. Thrashing can be used to confuse a predator and make it harder for that predator to seize the snake. Furthermore, thrashing can just kick up leaf litter and dust to further confuse a predator. Mock strikes, defensive lunges and headbutts. Mock strikes and defensive lunges are a snake's equivalent of a boxer throwing a feint or a false punch that intentionally misses or falls short of its target in order to put their opponent on the back foot. Snakes do this to give the impression they are striking, but without carrying the risk of personal injury by physically coming into contact with their opponent. If a snake was to bite something unnecessarily and damage its fangs, it may not be able to feed for some time until they are replaced. Offensive advancing. Offensive advancing is when a snake charges towards a perceived predator to force that opponent to retreat. When a person says they were chased by a snake, this is the behaviour they are referring to. It is important to understand that this behaviour is designed to warn off predators by appearing intimidating. When you are far enough away and the snake feels safe again, it will flee or go back to its natural behaviour. Countless times while I've been filming snakes performing this behaviour, the snake has advanced towards me in a defensive manner only to dart down a hole into the nearest cover or retreat in the other direction at the first available opportunity. When you see a snake performing this behaviour, it is simply telling you to back off so it can escape or at the least feel safe again. While these advances may appear aggressive, it is generally not the intention of the snake to catch and bite you. Biting you does not benefit the snake in any way. The only thing a snake intends to bite and envenomate is its prey. To demonstrate my point, take a look at these brown snakes at feeding time. You'll notice three main differences with the way they attack their prey compared with biting to defend themselves. They wrap around their prey using constriction to secure the prey item. They bite and hold on to ensure venom is delivered, and they don't give any warnings in the form of defensive behaviour. They just attack their prey to the full extent of their ability. If snakes did this every time they encountered a human, we wouldn't stand a chance. Biting and dry biting. When a front fang venomous snake bites down with enough pressure, the muscles around the venom gland contract, forcing venom to flow along the venom ducts and through the fangs. A successful venomous bite generally depends on how effectively the snake has bitten the subject and whether the snake bites down hard enough to engage the muscles around the venom gland. When defending themselves against a predator, snakes often strike out to intimidate their opponent without intending to deliver venom. A dry bite occurs when a snake bites a subject but does not inject venom. Dry bites may just be quick defensive bites, or they may just be glancing bites where the fangs contact the victim's skin, but the snake does not hold on long enough or bite down with enough force to result in the successful delivery of venom. While further research is required on this topic, it is becoming widely accepted that venomous snakes instinctively know when to use and when not to use their venom. Put simply, if a venomous snake bites a prey item, their intent is to inject venom 100% of the time, otherwise they risk losing their hard-earned meal. Alternatively, when a venomous snake bites to defend itself, they don't always inject venom, presumably for two reasons. 1. There is no situation where a snake benefits from using its venom on a non-prey item. It is a waste of venom and risks injury to the snake. 2. If a snake is faced with a life and death situation and a confrontation were to take place, no matter how venomous that snake is, its venom won't act fast enough to stop the predator from killing the snake in the first place. Therefore, it is unlikely that venom is intentionally used by Australian venomous snakes as a defensive strategy, and envenomations on humans likely occur as a result of the snake simply possessing venom and biting to defend itself. In the case of the eastern brown snake, the species that is responsible for the most human fatalities in Australia, statistics show that the rate of envenoming on humans is approximately 20 to 40%, meaning dry bites occur in 60 to 80% of bite cases. With such a low rate of envenoming on humans, it stands to reason that they instinctively know not to use their venom on anything they cannot eat. A final word on defensive behaviour. Biting for snakes is generally a last resort, as it is the riskiest of all defensive behaviours. Most bites occur when the snake has been stood on, caught, handled, or otherwise suddenly interfered with by a human or a pet, without being afforded the opportunity to flee or warn off their aggressor with defensive tactics. Given the chance, a snake will hide from you, flee from you, or give you as many warnings as possible in the form of the aforementioned defensive behaviours. Bites on humans and domestic animals are only ever a result of the snake being scared and feeling the need to defend itself. Snakes do not go around intentionally stalking and biting people and their pets, as some people wrongly believe. Many Australians wrongly believe that snakes are territorial. Territorial animals such as wolves and lions mark out a piece of land as their territory and defend that territory by attacking other animals that trespass. Snakes do not mark out a territory and defend it against humans or our domestic animals. For this reason, it is incorrect to describe snakes as territorial in this manner. Rather than a territory, snakes have a home range, or an area in which they live. They move around within this home range in search of resources such as prey, water, areas of refuge, and a mate during breeding season. I believe that the term territorial has been incorrectly used by those who encounter a defensive snake. What these people need to understand is the snake isn't defending a territory, it is defending its personal safety because it perceives you as a large predator. When male snakes are observed in combat during breeding season, this behaviour can also be perceived as males being territorial. They are not actually fighting to defend their territory, they are fighting for dominance over their opponent. The victor wins the right to mate with a nearby female. That completes the section on fight, flight and crypsis, which are the main ways snakes defend themselves. Before moving on, I'll go on to a few other interesting ways Australian snakes defend themselves, such as elaborate defensive displays, aposematism, musking, and potentially caudal luring. Elaborate defensive displays. There is one Australian snake called the 𝗕𝗘𝗦𝗦𝗢 that has a rather unusual defensive tactic whereby it will throw itself into large loops and raise them high off the ground. By doing this, the 𝗕𝗘𝗦𝗦𝗢 is achieving two things. It is changing its form so it doesn't resemble a snake, and it is raising its body high up off the ground to appear many times larger. This may appear strange to us, but it can be quite confusing to a potential predator at night when the 𝗕𝗘𝗦𝗦𝗢s are active. Aposematism is when animals use bright colours to warn predators that they are dangerous, venomous, or undesirable to eat. Usually, bright forms of red, yellow, or orange convey this message well in the animal kingdom. Have you ever noticed that the black and yellow banding on tiger snakes looks quite similar to venomous bees? And this western brown snake is bright orange and black, much like hornets and wasps. Some snakes, such as the coastal taipan and various species of brown snakes, use aposematic colours as part of their defensive displays. These snakes are various shades of brown on top to remain camouflaged, but when they rear their forebodies up off the ground and perform defensive displays, they flash bright orange markings on their ventral scales or belly scales to convey to their opponent they are venomous or dangerous. Musking. When a snake is seized by a predator, some species have the ability to musk their aggressor. Musking is the excretion of a pungent substance released from the cloaca or rear end of the snake. It smells and probably tastes horrible, and it's designed to discourage predators from eating them. If a snake is really being harassed, they may also release urine and feces at the same time. Many snake catchers, including myself, unfortunately experience this while catching and relocating snakes from people's properties. Caudal luring or tail luring is generally a predatory technique used by snakes to mimic a worm in order to attract prey. Australian death adders specialise in this behaviour while they lie in ambush for unsuspecting prey. But I've also observed snakes and lizards performing this behaviour when they are nervous or excited. Take this spotted mulga snake for example. When I stumbled upon it laying in the middle of a quiet dirt road in a remote part of Western Australia, it was very unsure of me and my vehicle. The snake had not been run over or injured in any way, and it performed this behaviour nervously for some time before fleeing. Caudal luring in situations like this may simply just be a nervous twitch, or it may be a defensive tactic to entice a potential predator to attack a less vulnerable part of the animal like the tail, rather than the head where the brain is located. What to do when encountering a snake. If you see a snake in the wild, remember that they are native wildlife and they do belong there. Keep your distance and admire from afar. Do not approach the snake as you may provoke a defensive reaction. If you see a snake in your yard, there is no need to panic. Think safety first and calmly move any children or pets inside and alert anyone in the immediate vicinity. If you can achieve this while someone keeps an eye on the snake, it will assist a snake catcher to find the snake when they arrive. Or it will at least provide you with some peace of mind if you know where the snake went. If this is the first time you've encountered the snake, more often than not, the snake is just passing through in search of food, water, or a mate. If it stays on your property and you want it removed, then call a local snake catcher. In this case, it is best to keep an eye on the snake and call from a mobile phone, preferably using a number that you have saved in your phone by being prepared. If the snake is in your house, try to contain the snake to the room it is in by closing internal doors and windows and rolling up a towel and placing it at the bottom of the door. If you have the option to call a snake catcher, then do it. Never try and remove a snake yourself without the appropriate training, permit, and experience. If you encounter a snake and it exhibits defensive behaviour towards you due to your close proximity to it, then removing yourself from the snake's vicinity as quick as possible is your highest priority. When you're at a safe distance or out of the snake's field of view, the snake will stop perceiving you as a threat and return to its natural behaviour. Watch closely while my friend and colleague Richie Gilbert demonstrates the typical defensive behaviour of the highly venomous eastern brown snake. Eastern brown snakes are perceived as aggressive because they appear quite intimidating when performing their defensive display. However, as you can see, this is mostly just bluff, and at no stage does the snake actually bite anything. You'll notice that the snake responds defensively to the movement of the bag rather than Richie himself. When the bag stops moving, the snake no longer perceives it as a threat, and it is happy to move off. If you suddenly find yourself extremely close to a snake, for example you almost step on one or one slithers past very close to you, freezing and remaining extremely still is the best course of action to avoid provoking a defensive reaction from the snake. If you move, you may alert the snake to your presence and provoke a defensive reaction. You may then let the snake move off in its own time, or as long as the snake remains calm, you can slowly try moving away yourself, but only if you feel it is safe to do so. The following footage will show you exactly how to respond if you find yourself too close to a highly venomous Australian snake. Now I'm up in North Queensland at the moment and I'm filming a wild coastal taipan in its natural habitat. And coastal taipans are among Australia's most deadly and formidable snakes. And to help me film this individual, I'm joined by my friend and fellow snake enthusiast, Steve Tuckey. And Steve is positioned in front of the snake or over the top of it right now because he's trying to get some close-up footage as the snake cruises past him. But what happens is snakes don't like being out in the open. So the taipan starts to investigate a crack under Steve's foot, thinking it might be somewhere it can go in and shelter. And then Steve moves and that gets the attention of the taipan. And then the taipan starts to investigate Steve to make sure that it's not a predator. You can see him flicking its tongue and trying to register whether Steve is a known predator to this snake or not, or whether it's a threat. After a while, it realizes that Steve is not a threat because Steve is doing exactly what you need to do in this situation and stay perfectly still. If you move, you can provoke a defensive reaction and scare the snake into biting. So if you yourself find yourself in a situation similar to this, the best thing to do is if the snake is right at your feet like it is at Steve's and it's too close and you think you might get bitten, the best thing to do is stay perfectly still and let the snake move off in its own time. If there is some distance between you and the animal, feel free to remove yourself as quickly or as slowly as you deem fit. And one thing I can't stress enough to the general public is that snakes are not out to get you. They are simply like any other wild animal. All they want to do is find food, shelter and a mate during breeding season and stay away from potential predators. And they see us as potential predators. So the only reason they're going to have the bite is out of defense. So give them the space they deserve and the respect. And hopefully after seeing footage like this, more people will learn to coexist with these very misunderstood animals.
I hope that you found this documentary educational, but more importantly, informative. I trust after watching it, you've gained a better understanding of Australian venomous snakes, their behaviour, their intentions, and the important role they play in the ecosystem. I sincerely hope that your fear of venomous snakes has somewhat reduced after hearing the truth about snakebite and animal-related deaths in Australia, and I hope you're now better equipped to handle an encounter should you have one. Above all, I implore the general public to reframe the way they perceive venomous snakes. Whether you like them or not is completely up to you, but please respect their right to exist and find a way to coexist. For more information on Australian snakes, including snakebite first aid and precautions you can take around the home to keep you, your family and your pets safe, please visit my website at rmrphotography.com.au, and you can also check out my work there as well. And before we go, please thank my friend here, the highly venomous Australian 𝗔𝗘𝗔𝗗𝗦 from Western Australia. Thanks for watching and stay safe everyone.